The US Supreme Court has delivered a ruling that curbs the power of federal judges to block nationwide orders made by Donald Trump. In the last few minutes, the US president has given his reaction to the ruling.
I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a hand of the president numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy. These judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me.
Well, now, the landmark decision follows an order made by President Trump to end the constitutional right of birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. Pam Bondi, the US Attorney General, told reporters that a decision on that policy will likely be made by the Supreme Court in October. Well, let's bring in Greg Nunziata, who's a former General Counsel to Marco Rubio and Executive Director of the Society for the Rule of Law. Good afternoon to you, Greg.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks very much for coming on the show. I mean, it was really interesting to see, Donald Trump has had quite the week, hasn't he? And he described this as a monumental victory. Do you concur?
It is a very important case. It certainly doesn't go to the heart of the litigation. His decision to attempt to end birthright citizenship by presidential fiat, contrary to the law and the Constitution, I think still has very long odds in court. This was a significant case, though, for how courts operate. We have had a practice in this country that began in the middle of the 20th century and became more and more common, where an individual person would challenge a new law or executive action in a court, would often choose a court that they would expect to be sympathetic, and would get that court to issue a nationwide injunction kind of at the outset of the litigation. So before the trial, before the process even continues, just to freeze the federal law. And this, contrary to what Mr. Trump has said this morning, this was not new to him. This was around, I said, for decades. It has been getting much more common in the last 20 years. Republicans used it a great deal against President Biden. Now Democrats are using it against President Trump. But so it certainly complicates our politics when major new initiatives are just blocked by the courts right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I'm sure some politicians in the UK and Europe would have some sympathy with wanting to curb the powers of the judges. But how dangerous is it, in your view, constitutionally, to hand a president so much power?
Well, our system depends on checks and balances, and we're really being tested today for a few reasons. One is that Congress has not been interested in doing its job and constraining the executive, and that's been a problem on both sides. Republicans in Congress tend to let presidents of their party get away with whatever they wish, and Democrats do the same. So we put more and more pressure on the courts to hold the line and to check the executive branch and Congress when they overreach. And weakening the courts would be a very bad thing, but I don't think we've seen that yet. The court today I just read it quickly, 120-page opinion, so there's a lot in there to unpack. But I think it made pretty clear that there are other avenues that folks who wish to challenge the legality of this order can pursue. First of all, it left the injunctions in place for the plaintiffs who sued. So the people in this case are protected from the enforcement of that law. The question is for a broader class of people around the country, and there are other mechanisms. We have a process called class action here. It's a little bit more involved. But there's a way to establish a nationwide class to challenge an action. And Justice Kavanaugh, one of the president's appointees on the court, wrote separately to say it is important for the court to be able to uphold injunctions, perhaps of a national scope, so long as they are properly brought before the court through another mechanism. So it's really not the end of the day for the vitality of the court or the ability of citizens to challenge unconstitutional actions in court.
Right. So it is a victory, but not quite the sort of monumental victory that the president in typical exaggerated style is claiming.
It is not monumental for his power or claim power at all. It's a monumental change to how we will go about some aspects of constitutional litigation in our country. It'll change the day-to-day practice of constitutional lawyers in a big way. But that's not to say that it shifts the balance of power to the president in any meaningful way. But
will it encourage him to sign yet more executive orders, do you think?
I don't know that he needs any more encouragement. I mean, this president is trying to govern through executive orders in ways that we've never seen before, and it is I think testing our system in lots of ways. Some of these orders are very weakly grounded in law and are I think quite clearly unconstitutional, and they'll be shown to be such, but the legal process to get an ultimate ruling here, generally takes a couple of years, not a matter of weeks or months.
I mean, on the other hand, will it? You talked about Congress not doing its job properly. Are there stirrings there where, Congress will start stepping up to the plate and challenging Trump, and perhaps more so in the wake of this ruling?
Well, yeah, I hope so. You've seen some of it in discrete areas. There have been more concerns from Congress, including Republicans, about some of the tariffs that the president issued, again, without congressional support. There's been something of a bipartisan move to strengthen Congress in the last couple of years. It's still, I think, a minority caucus in both parties, but I hope it's growing. It is important. And you see in the court's rulings, they say this over and over again, that Congress needs to step in and do its job. Even the question of this nationwide injunctions, the court today was, interpreting Congress's grant of power to the judiciary in 1789. Congress has had decades as national injunctions have grown to think about how they might want to limit them, and Congress has just failed to do that and left it to the court today to interpret a law from 1789, which was based on what was available in English courts of chancery at that time. I mean, that is what the decision was today,
Right.
because Congress been quiet in this area.
You're describing what happened today in quite calm, sort of measured terms, but we've had some messages in, and one listener here, just to put this to you, says this is incredibly dangerous. The US Constitution was disabled today. Trump is now ruling like an absolute monarch. What do you make of that?
Yeah, no, I think that's overreading what happened here. I understand, some of the three justices that dissented very strongly, and I understand. Look, I mean, part of the problem here is there's a tension between just I guess law and fact. I think the court was right, likely that nationwide injunctions went beyond the grant of power that Congress has given the courts, and it's just not how our system's supposed to work. And there are real problems with it, and it should be handled other ways, which might take a little longer in court. But critics, or those who are worried, are also right that we have a president who's overstepping his bounds and doing things that I think are weakly supported by law, to put it most kindly. And there's a hunger to see somebody do something about that. But our courts are not well suited to do it in this fashion. And there are real problems with national injunctions. And, I think most people who love them today were very frustrated by them 4 years ago when it was President Biden and Republicans picking sympathetic judges to freeze everything the administration tried to do.
Greg Nunziata, thank you very much for joining us with that analysis. Former General Counsel to Marco Rubio and Executive Director there of the Society for the Rule of Law.